The morning began like any other in the towering glass building of Vantage Technologies. Employees stepped into the lobby with tired eyes and steaming coffee cups, unaware that chaos waited for them on the top floor. Everything looked normal, until a trembling inner named Liam pushed open the CEO's office door. In the next instant, the cup in his hand slipped to the ground. The sound echoed across the hallway, sharp and lonely, because the scene inside the office did not belong to a regular workday. The CEO, Alan Pierce, lay collapsed near his desk, his phone on the floor beside him, as if he had tried to reach out for help. Liam's voice cracked as he whispered the man's name, but there was no answer. He backed away slowly, heart racing, mind fogged. The office looked too clean, too perfect, as if someone had carefully prepared it to hide the truth. The window blinds were half closed, letting in thin lines of pale morning light that fell over the room like cold stripes. The computer screen glowed faintly, showing nothing except a locked login page. Nothing seemed broken. Nothing seemed stolen. It felt like a scene frozen in time, untouched, but Liam sensed something was off even though he couldn't explain why. Security rushed in first, then the alarm followed, and within minutes the building filled with whispers, confusion, and the heavy tension of something far bigger than an accident. The police arrived, and with them came Inspector Charlie Hudson and his loyal partner, Rex. As soon as they entered the office, Rex paused, his head tilted, his ears twitched. Something in the air made him uneasy. Hudson noticed it immediately. He trusted Rex's instincts more than any piece of equipment the department owned. Hudson walked around the room slowly, taking in every detail. A faint chemical smell lingered, something almost unnoticeable unless you were looking for it. The blinds were positioned neatly, as if someone had set them with purpose. The desk was spotless, cleaner than a working desk should be. Even the papers were arranged carefully, stacked with perfect edges. Hudson knelt beside the body, examining the position of the hands, the angle of collapse. It didn't look random. It looked like someone had placed him there deliberately, calmly, and with enough confidence to believe they wouldn't be caught. Liam stood outside the doorway, pale and frightened, answering questions with shaky breaths. He kept repeating the same words, "I didn't touch anything. I didn't touch anything." And although he spoke the truth, Hudson could tell he was holding something back, not because he was guilty, but because fear had a tight grip on his throat. Rex walked out to him, sniffing the air around him, sensing his stress, but also that he wasn't the source of the wrongdoing. Inside the office, Hudson noticed something small. Near the edge of the plant pot beside the window, a piece of something shiny, too tiny to notice, unless you looked closely. He reached for it gently. It was a fragment of plastic, broken, but with a strange pattern on one side, like the remains of a device. Hudson slipped it into an evidence bag, feeling the first spark of a lead. Whoever had come here hadn't planned for this fragment to survive. Rex walked to the corner of the room and sniffed again, this time letting out a low, frustrated sound. Hudson turned. "What do you smell, partner?" Rex didn't move toward the body. Instead, he moved toward the ventilation grate near the floor. Hudson crouched beside it. On the metallic surface, barely visible, was a faint residue, pale, powdery, almost hidden by the shadows. Hudson knew they were no longer dealing with a simple corporate tragedy. Someone had planned this with precision. Someone who understood how to leave a room looking untouched. Someone who believed a locked door and a controlled scene would keep the truth buried. But they hadn't counted on Rex. As Rex pressed his nose closer to the grate, Hudson felt the first pieces of a dangerous puzzle falling into place. Whoever did this wanted to stay invisible, but the smallest things, the smell in the air, the trace of powder, the broken fragment, were already whispering the truth. And this was only the beginning. The investigation moved quickly, but the deeper Hudson looked, the more the case began to feel like a puzzle with half the pieces shaved down to fit the wrong places. After securing the scene, the team brought every scrap of evidence back to the lab, hoping at least one clue would speak clearly. But when Sarah Bennett laid everything under the bright white lab lights, she frowned. The fragment Hudson found near the plant pot wasn't from any common device. It wasn't a USB, a foam piece, or anything she could instantly identify. It had a strange textured pattern, almost like something meant to blend in rather than stand out. That alone told her it was not accidental. Someone had used a specialized tool or gadget inside that office, and they'd been careful enough to destroy most of it. They just hadn't been careful enough to destroy all of it. Meanwhile, Rex walked the station hallway with restless steps. He kept glancing at Hudson as if urging him to trust the instinct. He already felt this crime wasn't just about a murder. It was about control. Someone wanted the narrative to stay hidden. Someone wanted to erase the digital world around the victim before anyone noticed. The erased hard drive, the offline cameras, The silent room. It was all engineered. Hudson returned to the interview room where Liam sat, still pale, but trying to stay composed. The boy's hands trembled each time he tried to steady his voice. Hudson didn't pressure him. Instead, he asked questions that moved slowly, gently, giving Liam space to breathe. What time did he arrive? Did he hear anything strange? Was the office locked when he found it? Liam answered, but his eyes kept darting to the corners, avoiding direct contact. It wasn't guilt. Hudson had seen guilt many times. This was fear mixed with confusion, like someone who had seen something but didn't yet understand what it meant. Finally, Liam admitted that he'd noticed something on the night before. He had stayed late to finish a report, and as he walked past the CEO's office, he heard a faint clicking sound from inside. At that moment, he assumed the CEO was working late. But now, thinking back, he was certain the room's lights were off. The clicking ended after a few seconds, followed by silence. Liam never opened the door, never questioned it, never imagined the sound could be part of something darker. Hudson wrote everything down. In a case like this, even a meaningless noise might hide significance. Back in the lab, Sarah finished analyzing the residue Rex had found on the ventilation grate. Her results were startling. The powder wasn't dust or dirt, it was a chemical used by high-end technicians to neutralize sensors. In simple terms, someone had sprayed a substance that temporarily blinded motion detectors and environmental alerts, without triggering alarms. That meant the killer didn't just walk into the office. They walked in as a ghost. No footprint, no camera, no timetable, and most importantly, no forced entry. Hudson leaned over the analysis table, staring at the residue report. Only a handful of professionals in the region had access to such chemicals, and they were usually tied to secure labs, military-grade facilities, or advanced cybersecurity teams. It wasn't the tool of an amateur. It was the signature of someone who knew how to slip through cracks meant to be sealed shut. At that moment, Jesse called out from his workstation. He had recovered a partial data log from the CEO's computer. Although most of the drive had been wiped clean, one file timestamp survived. It showed a login attempt at 3:14 a.m. hours before the cleaning crew arrived. Hours before anyone in the building showed up. The strange part was the user ID. It belonged to Alan Pierce himself. But the CEO had been at his home at that time. Phone records proved he hadn't left. That meant someone had cloned his access credentials. Hudson felt the tension in his shoulders rise. A clone ID, a neutralized security system, a wiped hard drive, all signs of someone who planned every second of their break-in. But if they were that careful, why leave a plastic fragment behind? Why leave chemical residue? Why leave anything? Rex nudged Hudson's leg, pulling him back from his thoughts. The dog wasn't anxious. He was focused, like he understood there was a pattern forming even if the humans hadn't seen it yet. Hudson crouched beside him. "You're right," he murmured. "Someone slipped. Someone left something they didn't expect us to find." He straightened and looked at the team. Whoever we're dealing with didn't just want the CEO dead. They wanted to rewrite the story. They wanted this case to vanish before it even started. But the case wasn't vanishing. Not with Rex catching every scent left behind. Not with Hudson catching every lie. The killer had built a wall of silence around the truth. The walls crack, and the first cracks were beginning to show. Hudson stood in the glass-walled briefing room, the city skyline glowing behind him like 100 watchful eyes. The pieces of the case were spread across the board: photos, timelines, chemical reports, and fragments of evidence. But the more the puzzle grew, the more it pointed in one direction. Someone close to the CEO had planned all of this. No break-in, no random outsider, no petty criminal. This crime had roots inside vanished technologies itself, buried deep beneath polished floors and polite smiles. The first name that rose to the surface was Victor Crane. He wasn't just a rival executive, he was the man who had been fighting Alan Pierce over a massive merger deal worth millions. Victor had always played clean in public, projecting the image of a sharp, disciplined professional. But behind closed doors, whispers followed him like shadows. Rumors of questionable deals, rumors of pressure tactics, rumors that he wanted Alan out of the way long before the merger talks even began. When Hudson looked over Victor's financial movements from the past week, he found something strange. Multiple large withdrawals labeled as consultation fees, paid to companies that didn't seem to exist anywhere except on paper. Shell accounts, fake fronts, money being funneled for something that couldn't be explained by simple business needs. But Victor wasn't the only name on the board. The second suspect was Erica Sloan, a cybersecurity expert who had worked closely with Alan for years. She had recently resigned, giving no reason and leaving abruptly. packing her office in less than an hour. That alone set off quiet alarms. But what pushed her higher on the list was the fact that she specialized in access tools cloning. Digital shadows, bypass systems, all the things the killer had used during the attack. She had once been part of a government project that focused on stealth entry systems. Few people knew how to manipulate digital fingerprints the way she did. According to her exit records, she had turned in her badge, her laptop, and her work phone. But she hadn't turned in her special access card, a card only for people in the entire company possessed. Then there was Liam. Not a suspect, but not fully innocent either. Hudson didn't believe the terrified intern had committed murder, but that didn't mean he wasn't connected somehow. People like Liam were easy to manipulate, overworked, underpaid, eager to impress, and afraid to make mistakes. If someone had used him as a tool without him realizing it, he might still hold a key detail, a forgotten memory, a misunderstood moment, a detail that seemed useless until the right question illuminated its meaning. Hudson planned to talk to him again, but not yet. Not until more pieces fell into place. As the team dug deeper, inconsistencies began to bloom like cracks in concrete. Jesse discovered that Victor Crane had accessed company servers late at night 3 times in the past month, something he had no real reason to do. When questioned, Victor claimed he had been reviewing merger documents, but those documents weren't stored on those servers. When Sarah cross-checked his access logs with physical building entries, another inconsistency appeared. His badge hadn't been scanned those nights, which meant he was either lying, or someone had used a clone badge identical to his. While Hudson discussed these findings, Rex paced slowly along the briefing room floor, nose twitching with curiosity. He wasn't searching the room, he was listening. Rex had a way of sensing shifts in mood, tension in voices, the small tremors of fear or dishonesty humans struggled to hide. And as the team talked about Victor, Rex's posture stiffened. It was as if something about that name didn't sit right with him. To get closer to the truth, Hudson set up meetings with each suspect, beginning with Victor. They met in his expansive office, where the windows stretched floor to ceiling and the furniture looked more expensive than most people's cars. Victor sat straight, confident, unbothered by the situation. He answered every question with calm, calculated precision. His tone never cracked, his gaze never drifted. But it was that confidence, the absolute certainty, that made Hudson suspicious. Innocent men searched for words. Guilty men rehearsed them. Rex, however, had the strongest reaction. As soon as Victor entered the room, Rex fixed his eyes on him, unblinking. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He simply stared with a sharp, focused intensity that made Victor shift in discomfort. Dogs couldn't be fooled by smooth sentences or fake smiles. They read something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface. Next came Erica Sloan. She arrived looking composed, dressed in quiet colors, her expression unreadable. She admitted she had resigned because she felt unsafe, claiming Alan Pierce had been acting strangely for weeks. But when Hudson asked her why she kept her access card, she hesitated for the first time. She claimed she forgot. Hudson didn't believe that. Someone with her skill set didn't forget tools. Tools were extensions of her hands. Rex sniffed near her briefcase and paused, his body tensed, tail stiff. Inside, Hudson found a sealed container holding the same neutralizing chemicals Sarah had tested earlier. Erica didn't deny it. She said she used it in her private projects. Another lie that didn't land softly. By the time the interviews ended, the board in the briefing room looked completely different. Lines were being drawn. Motives were taking shape. Hudson felt the weight of the case pressing heavier against him. Someone was orchestrating everything from the shadows. Someone clever, patient, and confident enough to play with millions like they were loose change. But even the smartest criminals made mistakes. And Hudson knew the biggest mistake was yet to surface. Rex felt it too. The case was heading towards something darker than they expected. Something neither of them could yet see, but both of them could sense like thunder before a storm. Asterisk night settled over the city with a heavy stillness, as if the streets themselves were holding their breath. Inside the precinct, the lights glowed low and warm, but the tension inside the building had grown cold and sharp. The pieces of the case were piling up, yet something didn't fit like a perfectly drawn picture with one wrong colored line. Hudson stood alone in the dim hallway, replaying every detail of the day, every answer from every suspect. Victor's confidence, Erica's calm lies, Liam's trembling memories. All of it pointed to a careful plan. But there was a missing heartbeat in the story, a rhythm that didn't match. The killer had moved like a ghost, but real people always leave real traces. And if the clues didn't match the killer's skill level, that meant something far more dangerous was happening. Someone wanted the team to look in the wrong direction. Hudson returned to the lab, where Sarah was still working with tired eyes but a focused mind. The residue from the ventilation system had revealed not just one chemical but two. Combined, they created a temporary blind spot that could trick sensors for only a few minutes. Not ours. That mattered. It meant the killer didn't slip into the office long before the murder. They slipped in close to the moment of death, which meant the timeline everyone believed was wrong. Hudson stared at the chemical report, and something sparked in his mind a sudden, sharp realization. If the window of access was smaller than they had thought, then the clone ID log at 3:14 a.m. was a distraction. Hudson felt a slow chill. Someone had planted that timestamp. Someone wanted the team to believe the killer entered around that hour, but the chemicals proved otherwise. The killer had been inside the office much later, likely close to dawn. That meant Erica's story didn't line up. Her access card had been used the previous evening, but she never re-entered the building after leaving. Her badge logs were completely clean. To clean. Almost perfect. And in cases like this, perfection was a red flag. Real logs always had flaws, errors, small inconsistencies. When Hudson zoomed in on the digital file, he caught something tiny, an exact pattern repetition in the entry code that shouldn't exist. A sign of tampering. Erica's logs had been edited. Someone had crafted a digital mask to make it look like she was gone long before the crime occurred. Hudson's breath tightened. If someone edited her logs, it meant she wasn't acting alone. Someone else inside the company had the skills or access to manipulate digital trails. Someone with authority. Someone with the power to hide in plain sight. Rex stepped into the lab quietly, tail low but alert. He moved to Hudson's side, nudging him as if pushing him toward an answer. Hudson knelt, running a hand across Rex's fur. "What am I missing, partner?" he whispered. Rex turned his head toward the evidence board. His gaze fell on a single, overlooked photo and image of the CEO's office door. The door frame, the clean metallic handle, the small smudge near the lock. Hudson's eyes narrowed. He hadn't noticed the smudge before. Not until now. He zoomed into the image and saw it clearly, a faint fingerprint streak sideways, as if someone had wiped it after opening the door. Not cleaned, wiped. A rushed attempt to erase a mark. Hudson brought the photo to Sarah, with enhanced filters. She confirmed it wasn't dust or random touch. It was a partial print and it didn't belong to Victor, Erica, or Liam. It belonged to someone whose name had barely been mentioned in the case, the building's operations director, Harold Vance, a man who stayed late every night, who oversaw access systems, and who knew every corner of the building's security layout. A man who had keys, override codes, and authorization to modify entry logs. A man so quiet, so unnoticed, he was nearly invisible. Hudson felt a rush of adrenaline.